don't need to walk across that stage. Maya, it would just be rubbing it in your brother's face, my mom said, her voice firm but her eyes avoiding mine, fixed instead on the steam rising from her chai. The ceramic mug felt like a shield in her hands, a barrier against the disappointment radiating from me. I stood frozen in the middle of our sunlit kitchen, the cheap black polyester of my graduation gown draped over my arm. Its weight, a symbol of 4 years of all-nighters, missed parties, and financial struggle, suddenly felt unbearable. That single sentence, so casually delivered, shattered the crystal-clear image I had of this day my day. I'd pictured her in the third row, her face crinkled with a proud smile, her hands clapping the loudest. Now that image cracked and splintered, leaving a hollow ache in my chest. Hi, I'm Maya and I'm 26 years old. And that was the moment I realized blood doesn't always mean support. The silence in the kitchen was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. I could see my brother Arjun slumped on the living room couch, the blue light of his gaming console reflecting in his glazed eyes. His failure was a fresh wound in our household, treated with kid gloves and endless excuses. My success, it seemed, was the salt being poured into it. Mom, this is my achievement, I whispered, my voice trembling. I worked 2 jobs for this. This is for me. And what about him, Maya? She finally met my gaze, her own filled with a pained urgency. Do you know how he'll feel saying you get all that applause while he's stuck? Be the bigger person. We'll have a nice dinner at home to celebrate. The bigger person. The phrase was a lifetime sentence of diminishing my own light, so his wouldn't seem so dim. The anger that rose in me was hot and sharp, a clean cut through years of compromise. I didn't reply. I just turned, walked out of the kitchen, and drove to the ceremony alone. The auditorium was a roaring sea of joy. As I walked across that stage, my name echoing in the vast hall, I scanned the crowd out of habit. The seat I had saved for her was empty, a stark, glaring void. But in that void, I found a strange, fierce freedom. The applause I received wasn't from her, but it was from me, and me alone. Later that evening, I didn't go home. I went to a diner with friends, my cap still perched proudly on my head. I posted pictures online, me beaming, holding my diploma, surrounded by people who genuinely cheered for my wins. The comments flooded in. So proud of you, Maya. You did it. And then buried among them, a single comment from my mom. You looked beautiful. I'm sorry I missed it. She called me an hour later, her voice thick with tears. She had seen the photos, read the hundreds of comments from aunties and uncles and my friends, all celebrating a milestone she had chosen to ignore. The world's validation had held up a mirror to her choice, and she didn't like the reflection. I made her regret it. It wasn't said with vengeance, but with a quiet, solid finality. I didn't yell. I simply said, I know you are, Mom. And then I hung up. The silence that followed wasn't filled with her guilt, but with my newfound strength. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the family you choose, the one that shows up, matters more than the one you're born into. And I just started building mine. You see, I'm the first in my family to earn a master's degree. I'd worked 2 jobs mornings as a barista, my clothes permanently smelling of stale coffee grounds, and evenings inputting data in a cubicle under fluorescent lights that hummed a tune of quiet despair. I skipped vacations, watching friends post pictures from beaches while I reviewed flashcards. I even slept in my car during a particularly rough semester when my rent and tuition collided with catastrophic foresight for this. For the moment, I'd finally walk across that stage, feel the weight of the hood placed on my shoulders, and know, deep in my bones, that every sacrifice had been worth it. But I should have known better. Because I had an older brother, Aaron, and Aaron had always been the golden child, not for his achievements, but for his potential. He was the sun around which our family's hopes and anxieties orbited, and I was just a distant, steady moon. Even when he dropped out of college in his 2nd year, spent years bouncing from promising sales job to startup gig, and constantly borrowed money from our parents for surefire investments that never materialized. He was still the one who just needed a little more time to find himself. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the predictable, boring afterthought who paid her bills on time. Growing up, I learned the unspoken family rule quickly and painfully. If Aaron was failing, I needed to dim my own light. My successes were not my own. They were instruments of comparison that had to be handled carefully, lest they make him feel worse. My A's were met with a distracted, "That's nice." Beta, while his C's were analyzed with the intensity of a medical emergency, followed by a new video game to cheer him up. The memory of my high school graduation is a perfect, painful capsule of this dynamic. I was valedictorian. I had spent weeks practicing my speech, my white dress pristine, a corsage pinned carefully to my lapel. I was buzzing with a nervous, happy energy. And then, just before the ceremony started, the principal pulled my parents aside. Aaron, who had come reluctantly, had gotten caught with a bag of weed behind the gym. The rest is a blur of my parents' panicked whispers, then rushing away and me standing alone on the football field after everyone had left. My speech forgotten, my corsage wilting in the heat. Guess who didn't get a single family photo that day? The cameras, like my parents' attention, had followed the crisis dot, so standing in the kitchen years later, holding my master's gown, my mother's request wasn't a surprise. It was a familiar, soul-crushing tradition. It was the same play, just on a bigger stage. But this time, I had bought my own ticket, written my own script. And I was done being a supporting character in Aaron's never-ending drama dot at my undergrad ceremony. He got dumped by his girlfriend mid-event via a brutal text message. I remember the exact moment. I was lining up, my cap slightly askew, my heart thumping with a nervous, happy rhythm. My parents had been there, looking mildly proud. Then the text came. Aaron's face crumpled. He showed the phone to my mom, and her face instantly mirrored his devastation. They spent the rest of the ceremony huddled in the corner of the auditorium, my mom's arm around him, whispering consolations while he scrolled through old photos. I walked across the stage to the polite applause of strangers, my smile a tight, strained mask. I had to pretend to be happy while my own mother cried over his heartbreak, my achievement reduced to an inconvenient backdrop for his latest drama. The photos from that day show my eyes are dead dots, so when I earned my master's degree with honors, a distinction no one else in my family could even comprehend, I stupidly, naively let a fragile seed of hope bloom in my chest. This time, I thought, this degree is heavier, more significant. The sacrifices were starker than nights in my car, the empty bank account. This time, the scale would finally tip. My success would be too big to ignore, too monumental to dim. I was a fool. 3 days before the ceremony, my phone lit up with my mom's picture. I answered, expecting a reminder about what time to arrive. Instead, I was met with the sound of her crying soft, wet sobs that were usually reserved for Aaron's catastrophes. "Aaron's devastated," she choked out, not even a hello. "He saw your post about the ceremony. You getting this degree with all those honors while he's still figuring things out? It's really hard for him. It's a constant reminder of his failures." I stood there, holding the phone, my own graduation invitation list in my other hand. The silence on my end stretched, filled with the crumbling of that stupid, hopeful seed. "Maybe," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if she were suggesting a clever solution. "Maybe you should just skip the whole ceremony. It's just a lot of pomp and circumstance anyway, right? Just take the diploma quietly in the mail. We'll have a cake at home. It would be the kinder thing to do." I thought it was a joke. A bizarre, twisted, stress-induced joke. A sharp, disbelieving laugh escaped my lips. "You can't be serious," I snorted, waiting for her to join in to say, "Of course not, Beta. I'm just nervous about the traffic." She didn't. The silence on the other end was absolute. And in that silence, I heard the sound of a lifetime of conditioning finally, irrevocably snapping. "It's just a piece of paper." "Maya," she added, her voice now laced with a familiar, weary frustration. "Don't be selfish." That word, selfish, It hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Selfish, after everything I'd done. After all the nights I stayed up studying with a textbook in one hand and an energy drink in the other, my eyes burning from the screen of my second shift data entry job. After I meticulously budgeted every rupee, foregoing new clothes, dinners out, even proper groceries some weeks, to pay for every single class myself, never once asking them for a thing. I was selfish, not because I had taken anything from anyone, but because I had the audacity to not fail like Aaron. My success was an active, personal insult to him. I didn't argue. I didn't scream or list my sacrifices. What was the point? You can't use logic to negotiate with a belief system built entirely on one person's emotional volatility. The silence on my end stretched, thick and heavy. "I have to go, Mom," I said, my voice unervingly calm, a flat lake hiding a tectonic shift deep below. I just ended the call, but inside, something shattered and rearranged itself. The last thread of my need for their validation finally snapped. The weight of a lifetime of being the easy child, the one who could be counted on to compromise, evaporated. In its place was a cold, clear, and terrifying freedom. Instead of canceling my celebration, I quietly made new plans. There was no dramatic declaration. This wasn't for them anymore. This was for me. I called my mentor from the university, Professor Jacobs, the one who found me asleep in the library at 6 a.m. and instead of scolding me, bought me breakfast. The one who'd seen my potential shining through the exhaustion and told me, "You have a fierce mind, Maya. Don't let the world extinguish it." "We'll find a way." She didn't hesitate. "The ceremony is at 2 p.m., I told her, my voice steady. "But I'm coming alone." "Then you'll sit with me," she said without a moment's pause, her voice a warm, solid anchor in the churning sea of my emotions. "My husband and I will be there. We will save you a seat at our family's dinner table afterward. You will be celebrated, Maya, properly." In that moment, Professor Jacobs offered me something my own blood never could. Uncomplicated, unwavering pride. She was choosing to be my family. And as I hung up the phone, I realized I was, for the first time, choosing my family too. "You're not alone, Maya. We'll fill those seats." And she did. Professor Jacobs created a ripple effect of support I never knew I had. My entire thesis committee came. My study group, the ones who had shared notes and coffee during all-nighters, saved a whole row. Even my landlord, Mr. Gable, a man of few words who had watched me juggle late rent payments and early exams, showed up in a slightly too tight suit, holding a bouquet of tulips. The seats my family should have occupied were filled with a chosen family. Their collective pride a tangible force in the auditorium. What no one in my birth family knew was that a week earlier, my inbox had held a secret that changed everything. An offer I hadn't even dared to tell them about, knowing it would be met with the same dampening energy as everything else in my life. Johns Hopkins. A full-time research position. A real adult salary. Health benefits. And a relocation bonus that felt like a fortune. They'd read the master's thesis I'd quietly submitted to a national competition. A thesis I'd written during those nights in my car, and instead of just an award, they offered me a leading role in their pediatric care innovations teamed out my mom didn't know. Because in the flurry of Aaron's latest crisis, she never once asked, "How are you, Maya? What's next for you?" My brother didn't know. Because our family had spent so long carefully curating a reality where my achievements were invisible, my ambitions a silent, inconvenient fact. The night before graduation, I invited them both to dinner. Just the three of them. They arrived 20 minutes late, as always. Aaron was on his phone the entire time, scrolling through social media, the blue light illuminating his bored expression. "So," my mom finally said, pushing her salad around her plate, "are you still thinking about skipping the ceremony tomorrow? We could just do a dinner after. Keep things low-key. It would be simpler for everyone. For Aaron?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Well," she sighed, "for the family." I smiled then, a small, serene smile that didn't reach my eyes. Then I pulled out a simple manila envelope from my bag and placed it on the table between the salt and pepper shakers. Inside were 3 documents: the glossy offer letter from Johns Hopkins, my graduation honors certificate with the embossed summa cum laude, and a folded feature from the university magazine. My face smiling next to the headline: Patel's research poised to change pediatric care. Simple doesn't suit me anymore, I said, my voice quiet but ironclad. I've spent a lifetime making myself smaller, quieter, and less so you two could feel bigger. But I'm done. The accommodations are over. My mom's face went pale as she scanned the Johns Hopkins letterhead. Aaron finally looked up from his phone, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "Whoa, you never told us about any of this," he said, a hint of accusation in his voice. "Because you never cared enough to ask," I replied, holding his gaze until he looked away. I didn't wait for dessert. I placed cash on the table for my meal, got up, and left them there with the shattered pieces of their narrative about me. And the next morning, I walked across that stage with my head held high, my steps sure. And when they called my name, Maya Patel, Master of Science, summa cum laude, the roar that followed was a standing ovation. It came from my professors, my friends, my chosen family, and even complete strangers who had heard snippets of my story and knew what it meant to watch someone work twice as hard for half the credit after the ceremony. My new boss, Dr. Evans, found me in the crowd. She shook my hand, then pressed a lanyard into my palm. The plastic badge was cool and solid. It read, Maya Patel, lead pediatric researcher. That moment it wasn't just mine. It was a message to the ghosts of the girl I used to be. A declaration that I didn't need their approval to be proud of who I'd become. 2 weeks later, as I was packing for Baltimore, my mom called. "Your graduation photos are all over Facebook," she said softly, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "All our friends are commenting. You look so beautiful. We're sorry." I held the phone, listening to the silence that followed her apology. I thought of the years of diminished smiles, canceled photos, and suppressed joy. I didn't reply. I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't. I didn't say I forgive you because that was a journey I hadn't finished, because I had finally learned that healing isn't about punishing those who hurt you. It's about finally and unconditionally giving yourself the love they never did. And that's exactly what I did.